Newsfirst at 9. Headlines.
Good evening and welcome to News at 9, coming to you live here from Colombo. Let's take a look at the headlines first. Chief Minister of the Northern Province, Sri Lanka, says the TNA could join the Parliamentary Select Committee if a proper agenda is presented to them. That will come later on in the bulletin. And also making headlines today, Australian Senate passes motion on Sri Lanka. Potatoes, onions and chilies receive a certified price. Skeletal remains unearthed from a playground in Trincomalee. Indian lawmakers use pepper spray chili powder amidst parliamentary pandemonium. Now, Newsfirst Naveen Majid has a detailed report on that coming up later on in the bulletin. But before that, let's now hand over the bulletin to Shahin Jurampati and Inoshi Ratnasekara at our studios.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. A very good evening to you. I'm Shahin Jurampati.
I'm Inoshi Ratnasekara. Let's take a look at your top story for tonight. In your top story, skeletal remains have been unearthed during excavations undertaken at a playground in Trincomalee. A police investigation is underway to determine if the remains are human or not.
The skeletal remains were unearthed during renovation work carried out at the Machazer playground in the centre of the Trincomalee town. Newsfirst attempted to obtain close-up footage of the discovery. However, the police did not permit us to do so. These are the footage that our correspondent obtained this morning. Meanwhile, at the cabinet media briefing held today, journalists raised questions over this discovery.
Skeletal remains were discovered in Matale and even in Suryakanda. There is a process that needs to be followed when recovering those remains. There are certain legal processes that need to be followed. There is a law in the country and we will abide by it.
Meanwhile, excavations continued at the site in Mannar, where a number of human skeletal remains were unearthed. 60 human skulls have been unearthed thus far, along with other skeletal remains. Judicial Medical Officer Dhananjay Vaidyaratna, who is conducting the medical examination, said that 40 complete skeletons have been placed at the court locker at the Mannar Hospital. Moreover, a mass grave was discovered when construction was undertaken to establish a biogas unit at the Matale General Hospital. 155 skeletal remains were discovered from the mass grave in Matale. These remains have been sent to a laboratory in China for testing.
Welcome back to the news. In your headlines this evening, Chief Minister of the Northern Province, Sri Lanka, says that the TNA could join the Parliamentary Select Committee if a proper agenda is presented to them. The Chief Minister made this statement addressing the National Conference on Post-War Socio-Economic Development of the Northern and Eastern Provinces of Sri Lanka, held in Colombo today.
The conference, which was graced by many intellectuals, saw Chief Minister C.V. Vigneswaran delivering the keynote address on the topic of accelerated provincial development, the way forward.
We are now being forced to carry on with the government's agenda for development along national policies. How can a development agenda that was prepared without the participation of the peoples of the Northern Province, without the conducting of a comprehensive post-war needs assessment, and without regard to the ground realities of military occupation and the post-war context, contribute towards development, leave alone accelerated development? At the discussions I had with His Excellency the President on the 2nd of January 2014, when I raised the above issues, I was advised the above approach is what the government does in all provinces and we need to comply with it. In other words, the government did not demonstrate interest in adopting a participative and consultative approach, bearing in mind the mandate received to us to address the specific post-war needs of the people of the Northern Province. There is a critical need to transform the central government's counter-terrorism mindset focused on state security to post-war need for human security. Steps must be taken immediately to confine military to barracks and to formulate a plan for a phased withdrawal from the Northern Province.
Meanwhile, addressing a question and answer session following his speech, the Chief Minister shared these views.
Personally, I do not know what Mr. Sambandhan has to say, but I had occasion to tell somebody who asked me, why not? We could join up with the, go for the Parliamentary Select Committee, but We must have an agenda in front of us, because the President himself has got Mr. Tissavitarne and others to come up with solutions, to come up with various things. And for the last 15-20 years, we have been working on this. Our academics have been working on it, and the basics for a settlement is all there. Only thing is, there is no heart to carry it out. Put that forward and say, this shall be the basis for a settlement, and please come around, let's discuss it in a parliamentary select committee. I can't see why my party should refuse such a thing. There is one important thing that should be kept in mind. That is, a bad law with good people can still work well. A good law with bad people will not work well, because this is very important. So it's not the amount of things that are in black and white which is important, but a change of our attitudes with regard to what we are doing and what we should do.
Meanwhile, Newsfirst special correspondent Nadeem Majid also attended a meeting with the Indian Foreign Secretary Sujata Singh at the Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi today. Speaking to the delegation of journalists, Singh highlighted several issues pertaining to Sri Lanka and the renewed India's call for the implementation of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution and beyond.
We are all aware of the fact that the situation is evolving and I would like to say that we are aware that Sri Lanka has made conscious efforts to pursue a lasting political settlement within the framework of a unified Sri Lanka, acceptable to all communities in Sri Lanka, including Tamils. India is committed to the unity, sovereignty and territorial integrity of Sri Lanka. It is important in this context that the government of Sri Lanka resumes a substantive dialogue with the TNA for a political settlement and reconciliation. India has consistently urged the Sri Lankan government to take forward the process of broader dialogue so that we can see some concrete progress towards a meaningful devolution of powers, including implementation of the 13th Amendment and beyond.
Meanwhile, a motion on Sri Lanka was passed in the Australian Senate on Sri Lanka today. The motion, moved by Australian Green Party Senators Leah Rhiannon, Claire Moore and Ursula Stevens, called on the Australian government to co-sponsor any UNHRC resolution on Sri Lanka's progress on accountability and human rights during the March 2014 session.
The motion submitted to the Australian Senate today calls on the Australian government to take a number of steps. Maintain Australia's strong record of support for human rights at the 24th session of the Human Rights Council, including in relation to Sri Lanka. Support the United States in its call for the international community to establish an independent international accountability mechanism to evaluate reports of war crimes, crimes against humanity and other human rights violations committed by both sides during and after the war in Sri Lanka. Co-sponsor any United States resolution at the UNHRC in March 2014 regarding Sri Lanka's progress on accountability and human rights. In addition, the Australian senators also urged the government of Sri Lanka to provide unimpeded access for media, international aid agencies and human rights groups into all regions of the country. The Australian motion also calls on the Sri Lankan government to end its media restrictions, including the obstacles to the flow of information in the north and east, and bring to book those responsible for attacks on journalists and newspaper officers. While the motion was passed, Senator Mitch Fifield, the Australian Assistant Minister for Social Services, who addressed the Senate, noted that a decision on whether Australia will co-sponsor a US-led resolution on Sri Lanka at the UN Human Rights Council in March will be made after due consideration of the final text and the balance of issues it raises. Senator Fifield adds that he encourages all parties to take a constructive approach towards the proposed resolution, adding that any resolution must go to assist the process of reconciliation. Incidentally, Greens Party Senator Leah Rhiannon, who was involved in moving the motion, was detained and subsequently deported from Sri Lanka in November 2013. She was deported from Sri Lanka for violating visa regulations.
And now the Indian External Affairs Minister Salman Khurshid made a statement yesterday that 30 years of war should not be an excuse for waiting another 30 years. Views were expressed in this regard during the cabinet media briefing held in Colombo today.
ලෝකයේ කිසිම රටක් මෙවැනි දරුණු යුද්ධයකට පසුව වසර 4ක් වැනි සුළු කාලයක් තුල
We cannot think that any country that got through war could be in a position to focus its attention on issues concerning reconciliation in a matter of 4 years. However, we have accomplished a lot within this period. What the Indian Foreign Minister said was right, but we are of the opinion that this statement was made as a result of something, and we doubt that this came about as a result of a different agenda. We have doubts whether this statement is an attempt to lobby support and steer the country towards an agenda created by them based on their needs.
ඔවුන් විසින් නිර්මාණය කරගන්න ලද වෙනත් අවශ්‍යතාවයන් උඩ නිර්මාණය කරගන්නා ලද න්‍යාය පත්‍රයකට රට යොමු කරන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා කියලා.
Addressing an event in Colombo today, President Mahinda Rajapakse commented on foreign influences.
අවුරුදු 30ක යුද්ධයකින් පස්සේ ත්‍රස්තවාදී යුද්ධයකින්
The 30 years long conflict was not one which was waged against the Tamil community or another community. It was a war against terrorism. At a time we are enjoying the results of it, we are also receiving the benefits from Geneva. It does not matter. We were able to free this country for the people. We were able to do this without separating the country. We were able to free the people from the scourge of terrorism.
ත්‍රස්තවාදීන් ජනතාව මුදව ගන්න පුළුවන්කම තිබුණා නම් ඊට වඩා
President Rajapakse also commented on the banking sector at the event held to present appointment letters to newly recruited bank employees at the PMICH today.
Banks are collapsing today because politicians in the past intervened in these matters. There was a time where bank loans were provided to their associates without any guarantors. The order came in a piece of paper or via a phone call. Millions were given. And today, those banks are in crisis. If a poor man takes a loan and fails to pay, the bank immediately responds by seizing the man's house. But if a man with millions fails to do so, the banks do not act fast. They are very slow.
Group leader of the United People's Freedom Alliance of the Colombo district, Udayagaman Pillar, commenced his election campaign in Colombo today.
Leader of the Jatika Urume, Venerable Dr. Omalpe Somidathero, was the chief guest at the event, and a song was also released in line with Gaman Pillar's campaign.
අපි මේ කොළඹ සහ තදාසන්න ප්‍රදේශවල සිටින 60000ක් පමණ වන
Around 60,000 people who live in Colombo live in extremely poor conditions. These people live near railroads and by the Beira Lake in extreme poverty. They not only need housing, but also a better environment. We accepted the task on behalf of them, and we are currently completing 14,000 houses for such people. Some question why the Defence Secretary was shoveling garbage. But if that is what the public requires, we will do that too. We work closely with Mayor Muzammil, and as a result his wife lost her nomination. That is the idea of good governance that they have.
Barack Obama ඡන්ද හොයනවා මාර්තු 28 වෙනිදා තියෙන ඡන්දෙට. Barack Obama ඡන්ද තියෙන්නේ ස්විට්සර්ලන්තේ ජිනීවා නුවර.
Barack Obama is looking for votes for the election on the 28th of March. Obama's election will be in Geneva, Switzerland, where he accuses us of war crimes. If stopping bombs from detonating in Colombo, where explosions ripped school children and stained their white uniforms in blood, is a war crime, then yes, we committed that war crime and we are ready for any punishment. However, commencing this election campaign, we pledge that as long as we are alive, Western forces will not be able to take the lives of war heroes who saved our lives.
The beggars in the country are facing a major problem these days. Their income has decreased as people have started providing these funds to Udayagaman Pillar's campaign. Being a beggar is extraordinary. Your goodness is not measured by wealth or material resources, but by the good traits that you display. That is how you become great.
අපගත ලක්ෂණ ප්‍රදර්ශනය කරන තරමටයි ඔබ ශ්‍රේෂ්ඨෙක් වෙන්නේ.